Hello, life groups. On our love series, we've been talking about the sacrificial form of God's love, and in some way or another, we all know this type of love. This is not a new concept that Jesus brought. It's something that was very familiar with the disciples, and it's the sacrificial form of love. So it's basically putting yourself second. It's not putting yourself first. It's putting yourself second. And so once again, remember, God's people are coming out from a place where they learned the culture of Egypt, and now God is kind of like re-educating re-educating his people, and he's basically talking about the highest form of love, but he's talking about now the priority of love. And I'm going to talk to you about the priority of love, and now the new motive is love. And so the priority of love is in Deuteronomy chapter 6, and we've read it, but let me go ahead and go over it with you really quick. Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 4. Yeah, Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 4. And once again, this is God speaking. He says, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one." Chapter 6, verse 5 now. It says, "And you shall love the Lord your God," he says, "with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. And these words which I'm commanding today shall be on your heart." So this is God saying, I'm the priority now. Okay, I'm the priority. I'm number one. So in order for the love of God to work within our lives, and for this to be the type of relationship where it's a working relationship in our relationship with God, then here's what it has to be. God's got to be number one. Okay. Now, people will say, well, what about family? How does that work? And you're supposed to love others, but here's something that Jesus goes ahead and talks about, and he says it in Luke chapter 14. As a matter of fact, go ahead and turn there now. Luke chapter 14, verse 26. And why don't you go ahead and read that? And the wording, we'll talk about the wording and how it's worded, how Jesus goes ahead and describes this. But I want you to go ahead and talk about it. Luke chapter 14, verse 26, and then come right back, okay? And we'll talk more. In Luke chapter 14, verse 26, Jesus is talking, and look what he says. He says, "If anyone comes to me and does not hate his own father and mother and wife and children, brothers, sisters, yes, and even his own life," he says, "he cannot be my disciple." And so in verse 27, very familiar passage also, he says, "Whoever does not carry his own cross and come after me cannot be my disciple." And so I want you to think of it like this, is that, it's, Jesus saying hate, but the actual word or the wording, I'm going to say it a little different from another translation, and it's from the Contemporary English Version. And look what it says. It says, "You cannot be my disciple unless," here it is, "you love me more than you love your father, mother, and your wife, children, and your brothers and sisters. You cannot follow me unless you love me more than you love your own life." And this is what Jesus is talking about. He's talking about as far as loving him more. There's a loving less and then a loving more. So I love God absolutely more. And so in loving God more, this is once again going back and pointing to the priority of God. So when it comes to loving others and loving family, spouse and children, you love them, but here's where Jesus is he's basically saying, you got to still love me more. I'm still the priority of your life. And the reason why it's important to talk about this is because sometimes, people can be challenging, and, where it's, you know what? As a matter of fact, here's a great example. When God goes ahead and tells Abraham, go ahead and sacrifice your son, your only begotten son. And so it was almost like it was a test. It was a test to say, which one do you love more? Do you love your Isaac or do you love me more? And I think, we're all going to be faced with some type of challenge, but remember that God is the priority. And so people are not our God. They're important, but when we go ahead and put God first, it basically shows that, Lord, you're number one. You are the priority of my life. And there might be things that might come to test that, and it's okay. I've even told my wife, I said, baby, I love you, I adore you, but here's the thing, is God is still number one. And you know what? She says the same thing right back to me. And here's the beautiful thing is that as long as you keep God number one within your life, and that love and that devotion is number one in your life, God's number one, once again, the best version of me that my wife and children will get is they'll get the best version. They'll get the better version than they'll ever get. And so people are not number one. Their priority is not number one. Now, in the world says, oh, I can't live without you. You're my number one. And if a person dies, then they all fall apart. God forbid a divorce, God forbid a tragedy. And then guess what happens? The whole world falls apart. But we were never supposed to live through people. We're actually supposed to live through God. He's our creator. And so that's, Luke chapter 14, verse 26. And then I want to talk to you now about the motive. The motive of our life is a different motive. The motive is now the fuel of God. That it's not people fuel, love fuel. It's God the Father fuel, Jesus fuel. My motive of why now I do things. So go to 1 Corinthians chapter 13. In 1 Corinthians. And we talked about this on Sunday that the fuel of our life is not the love of people or what I get from people. Actually, it's in my relationship with God, what I get from God. And so in 1 Corinthians, and we'll go over this this coming Sunday as far as more on the motive, which is the motive of love. And so in chapter 13, verse 1, and we're going to read from verse 1 to verse 3. It says, if I speak with the tongues of men and of angels and do not have love, he says, I become a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. Verse 2, it says, and if I have the gift of prophecy and know all mysteries and all knowledge and have all faith as to remove mountains, but do not have love, look what he says, I am nothing. Verse 3, he says, and if I give all my possessions to feed the poor, he says, and if I deliver my body to be burned and do not have love, look what it says, it profits me nothing. And so really, what's he saying? He says, the motive must be love. That is my motive. I am motivated by the love of God. And it's that motive that begins to lead me, begins to guide me. And it directs me, it guides me in making that sacrificial move because God's moving me. So before I even do something, it's already God working on the inside of me. All of a sudden, God's leading me. The love of God is leading me to give. God's leading me to pray more. That love, so it becomes, once again, the new why of my life. It's not a self-centered love. I'm doing it to get something out of you. I'm doing it to get something to profit me. No. I'm actually now moving in a new fuel, which is the love of God. It's the new motive of my life. And it's God leading me to go ahead and do this. God's leading me to forgive. God's leading me to go ahead and bless that person. God's leading me to go ahead and that person, that homeless guy that I always see on the corner, I'm going to give him a couple of bucks, all of a sudden, God begins to start leading you. Go over now to John chapter 21, talking about motive. We talked about this on Sunday. And how does God move within our lives? It's the new love. And I'll tell you something. I've been challenged with this so many times. And I remember, doing my first, speaking my first time. And I didn't want to do it. Me, self-preservation, I'm like, no, that's not my interest. That's not what I want to do. And I don't want to do it, But what was leading me was I had to go past self, and because God was leading me, the love of God was taking me into a new area of my life, a new direction of my life, stepping out and to do things. And so go to, once again, John chapter 21, and look at verse 15. And Jesus had just resurrected from the dead. And in his resurrection, he's going to go ahead and talk to Peter. And he had just caught a bunch of fish. And this was his job before. This was what he knew, his culture. And most likely his dad was a fisherman. His dad's dad was a fisherman. And that's all they knew was to catch fish. And so there's a big old catch of fish. And just kind of picture this in your head is that, here's a bunch of fish and it's worth a lot of money. And then here's Jesus on this side. Okay. And so it says in verse 15, watch. It says, so when they had finished breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? More than the value, more than the money, more than the fish, more than what this can add to you? And I want you to see this. He said to him, yes, Lord, you know I love you. And he said to him, then tend my lambs. And so Jesus is giving him now an instruction. And he's motivating him to go ahead and do the work of feeding the sheep, basically pastoring, being the minister. He's leading him to do this, and he's doing it not by fear. It's not like Jesus saying, you better do this or you're going to hell. You better do this or else I'm going to put sickness on you. No, none of that. He's saying the degree of how you love me. Do you love me more than these? And there's going to be these moments in your life where do you love me more than your friends? Do you love me more than your own personal time? Do you love me more than your own comfort? There's these things where the Lord's now going to start leading us, and maybe he has already been leading you. Maybe he's already been motivating you, and he motivates you by knocking upon the door of your heart and saying, you know what, man, stay away from those people. Go to me. I'm leading you this way. I'm directing you. I remember when I went to Bible school, and I wanted to go to this specific Bible school, but the Lord was telling me, go to this other's Bible school. And it was the leading of God, but it was the only reason why I made the choice to go in that direction where God was leading me was only one reason and one reason only. It wasn't for self. It wasn't what I wanted. It was because Jesus and my love for him was leading me in going into a specific direction. And if Jesus was motivating Peter with love, if you love me more than these, if you love me, then do this. And I like what Jesus says. He says in another portion of scripture, he says, why do you call me Lord, Lord, and don't do the things that I tell you to do? And so think of this, guys. What is Jesus motivating us today with? What could be the possibility of maybe, you know what? Let me step out of my own skin. Let me go ahead and step out of my own comfort zone. Jesus, what are you leading me into, Lord? And I want you to think about this. Here's the thing. Jesus, first off, going back to priority, you're priority number one. And maybe we need to reaffirm this. Lord, you're number one. You're my priority. And number two, what would it be as far as you motivating me to do? What are you leading me to do? And just kind of ask the question. Say, Lord, lead me. Speak to me, Lord God. What are you leading me? You leading me to forgive more. You leading me to bless other people, Lord God. And I remember one time the Lord was just kind of leading me just talk to strangers. Go, just look, that's a big step. Talk to strangers and talk to them about me. And I'm not that type of guy where I'm just going to go ahead and just start talking to people, in the mall and start praying for people. But you know what? I did it. Was I nervous? Yes. I didn't want to do it, but I did it for him. There's times even in just financial giving, I didn't want to do it, but it's the leading of the Lord, and I'm simply doing it because I love him more. I love him more than me. I love him more than my own self-interest. And it's very challenging, but I'll tell you something. I'm so glad that I stepped out and I did all those things, because not only did I experience God in a greater depth and a greater degree within my own life, also other people too. They experience the love of God. They experience God. And, it's a great, great thing, guys. It's a beautiful thing. And so, number one, let's check the motive of our hearts, our lives. Well, actually, before that, priority. Let's check the priority of our lives. Priority number one, love of our life, is not self-love. It's not us. It's not even other things, people or experiences. It's God, number one. And number two is the motive. He's got to be the biggest motive of our life. And I'll tell you something, he's going to begin to start moving you. And begin to start asking the Lord, lead me. It might be to get involved in church. It might be to start your own life group. It might be to do something, just to, talk to people, evangelize, talk to your family, tell them that you love them, tell them that you care about them, and it might be something of that sort, to help others, So ask Jesus, what are you moving me? What would you want out of me? Just ask that, and kind of talk about this, and what this means to you. And maybe the Lord's already been kind of leading you. Maybe the Lord's been speaking to you, talking to you, and go and talk about that. Okay. And, but other than that, I'll see you guys this Sunday. God bless you.